Breaking news, Miami Dolphins fans. Zach Sieler has been extended. Something that we have been clamoring for here at the channel finally gets done. The leader, the best player on this defense, gets rewarded. He had 2 years left on his contract, but he was severely underpaid at about $8-10 million over the next 2 years in base salary with not much guarantees either. And Chris Grier gives him a 3-year extension worth up to $67.75 million. And $44 million that is guaranteed. So now Sieler will be in Miami for the next 5 seasons, and this is a player that you needed to make happy because he is a captain. He was your best player on your football team a year ago, and he is in line for another dominant season alongside the rest of this really solid Miami Dolphins offensive line. But this is why you subscribe to the channel, because we will have you covered with all Miami Dolphins news. We dropped 2 videos earlier today, and here's the third of the day. So make sure you join the channel for daily Dolphins coverage. It is greatly appreciated when you hit that sub button. But Sieler, this extension will do multiple things for Miami. One, it locks him into the system for the next 5 seasons. And I do think he got paid more than I expected. I actually talked about a potential Zach Sieler extension, I think about 2 weeks ago on the channel. Another reason why you need to be subscribed. And I predicted that he'd probably get $17-18 million per season. I thought that's kind of where Miami was going to go with this. Now, we don't know what the exact is. It just says worth up to $67.75 mil, which that's like agent talk there. So you never know what the actual base salary is and the guarantees and when they come. But we'll have to look at that when that comes out. I assume Spotrac will have it eventually. But the point is, he gets a little bit more than I thought. But it does create $5.5 million in cap space for you right now, which will be very appreciated in the next couple of weeks when Miami probably makes a move, which we'll talk about what that could be here in just a second. But Sieler, who had 10 sacks in back-to-back years, and the question was around Zach was, is he going to be someone who can be productive to the level that he was in 2023 without Christian Wilkins? Because he never was that dominant of a player, right? He only had 2-3 sacks a year and was just a solid rotational interior defensive lineman. Then 2023, all of a sudden, he goes crazy and has 10 sacks alongside Wilkins on the interior. But then Wilkins leaves to go to the Raiders. We know how that saga has unfolded. But Zach still was unbelievably good in 2024. He had another 10-sack year. He played 15-plus games again. That's another reason why Sieler is just an awesome leader for this team. He's durable. He plays through injury. He's not one of these guys who is a little bit of a soft-minded individual, and we've had these conversations about players who may very well have that type of mindset. And we know that Deshaun Elliott, the former Dolphin safety, called out Miami in the middle of last season after he was having a career year with the Steelers about how Miami has a lot of people with that soft mindset. He is not referring to Zach Sieler, that is for sure. He is one of the hardest playing tough guys in the entire National Football League and one of the most underrated defensive linemen. So I'm happy that he's locked in here because this is what good organizations do. It is. Like, the way that you develop a culture and a standard inside your organization is by drafting, developing, and then extending your own guys. We know Miami, over the last 5 years under Chris Grier, well, it's been longer than that, but specifically in the last 5 years, when they've tried to go all in and be competitive, they've made trades for veterans and then extended them, and it hasn't worked out. Jalen Ramsey. We've seen it with Bradley Chubb. We saw it with Tyreek Hill. And yes, I know Bradley Chubb and Tyreek are still on the roster and 2 of the top players on this football team. But those are moves that you make in those trades for those high-level all-pro type of guys when you are already a playoff winning team, and then that is a move that potentially gets you over the top. I mean, just look back at what Washington did last year, right? They come out of nowhere. They made a really smart draft pick, obviously with Jaden Daniels. They have young guys like McLaurin, but I know that's going now. But then they made the playoffs. They made it to the NFC Championship game, and they're like, all right, now we're going to go make a move for Laremy Tunsil, Deebo Samuel. So it's like when you get to the point where you feel like you're on the precipice of really contending for a Super Bowl, that's when you go trade for a veteran. Miami just tried to jumpstart their entire rebuild and team by trading for veterans. This is what you have to do. You have to draft, you have to develop, and pay your guys. And Zach is the epitome of that. He's still 28, 29 years old, so he'll probably be here for, I would guess, the remainder of his career, considering he's got 5 years left on his contract. I have a hard time imagining him getting a big payday the next time he's available too, but who knows? Maybe if he continues this trajectory that he is on, he does ultimately get another payday, but it's going to be with the Miami Dolphins, at least I hope, for the remainder of his career, and he's going to be in Miami for the next 5 years. So before we talk more and speculate what could be coming next for the Dolphins, I do want to know your thoughts. Are you happy about the Zach Sieler extension? Type Y for yes or type N for no. Today's pinned comment. But I mentioned earlier in the video that this move created $5.5 million in cap space, and we always projected that a Sieler extension would likely come before the start of the season. We knew that it was something Miami was working on, and it's got done way in front of the season, which is nice because it also gives Miami the opportunity to add to the roster even more. And I know, you know what's going to come, Dolphins fans. I'm going to bring up the cornerback position because this is the same thing we've talked about over and over and over with. I would have loved to sign Noah Fant. I was very much in on adding him, considering how bad the Dolphins tight end room is, with Darren Waller not even participating any practices yet, and Julian Hill and Farrell Brown just being, I think, tight end threes and blocking tight ends at best. But there's not really any other tight ends available right now. The best one's Gerald Everett or Hayden Hurst. So it would have to be via trade, and I don't think that is going to happen. But there are 4 solid cornerbacks still out there. I'll say really 3. I don't really want to put James Bradbury in this conversation, but we know the big 3 that are still in free agency. Rasul Douglas, Asante Samuel Jr., and Stephon Gilmore. And Miami's cornerback room is just so piss poor right now. It is. Like, I've liked what I've seen from Jack Jones because he has shown me a lot in his first week of practice in Miami, but the problem is that he's not consistent enough, and he takes too many risks sometimes at cornerback where he gets burned and gives up a deep 40, 50-yard touchdown. It happens too often. Storm Duck has progressed nice in camp, was actually the orange practice player on Sunday morning's practice, but guess what? Are we trusting a second-year UDFA to be your number 1 corner on the outside? That seems pretty risky, especially with the amount of good wide receivers that you have to play early this season and just throughout the year as well. We know Kader Kohu, the best corner on Miami, is done for the year with a partially torn ACL. I really like the replacement Miami found for him in Mike Hilton, one of the best slot and nickel corners in the National Football League over the last 5 to 7 years, and he is someone that will bring a tough physical mindset as well. Excellent blitzer off of the edge, plays the run game extremely well, which will be a nice change of scenery because the Dolphins just haven't had corners that have been willing to tackle. That's also something that concerns me with Jack Jones. So when you think of what Miami could do to this roster to vastly improve it before that first week game against the Indianapolis Colts, it is adding another corner. And I think that Miami may be upping their offer to Rasul Douglas. This is something that the Dolphins have wanted to do the entire offseason. And we'll just take you through the timeline on Rasul Douglas. They took him into Dolphins headquarters right after the draft in early May. They offered him a contract. He said no, wasn't enough money. Well, then, as some injuries occurred, they offered him another contract 2 weeks ago on Thursday. He said no. Josina Anderson reported that there has been a ton of interest from NFL teams, and he is trying to figure out the best landing spot for him and potentially get more money as well. Well, maybe Miami ups their offer now that they have extra cap space due to the Zach Sieler extension. I've been very open about this. I think I would rather go with an Asante Samuel Jr. or a Stephon Gilmore. Rasul Douglas had a horrific year in coverage last season. QB rating when targeted of 124, gave up 5 touchdowns. And when you compare that to what Gilmore and Samuel Jr. did, Gilmore's numbers were better last season, despite him being 34 years old. I think he could still play at a solid level, and he would be your best outside corner as soon as you signed him. And Asante Samuel Jr. is, to me, the best out of the 3. The problem is that he's injury prone, and he's dealing with an injury now. had a neck/shoulder surgery in April. There was supposed to be a medical checkup in July. That was reported back in May by Jeremy Fowler. Now, we haven't had an update on Asante Samuel Jr., and I have a hard time imagining that the injury is actually good in terms of his recovery because he still is a free agent. Asante Samuel Jr., the talent, his youth, he's 25, shouldn't be a free agent. Maybe Miami revisits that. They've reached out to him and expressed interest earlier this offseason. I still think Miami probably prefers Rasul Douglas at this point, but I would rather go with one of Stephon Gilmore or Asante Samuel Jr. But with Miami now having $5.5 million in cap space, well, they can maybe go out and up their offer to one of these three guys, get them into the building, and create a more solid cornerback room. And if that happens, we will have you covered with a video as we always do. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel for the top-notch Dolphins coverage on YouTube that comes at you every single day. So subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow with another video.